It was a quiet morning inside the Whitmore mansion, the kind of silence that feels heavy, not peaceful, but filled with things left unsaid. The golden sunlight filtered through tall windows, landing gently on the marble floors where a small boy sat cross-legged, running his fingers along the ridges of a wooden toy. His name was Ethan Whitmore, the only son of billionaire Richard Whitmore, and he had been blind since birth. No one dared to question it anymore. The doctors had tried everything. Specialists from across the world had come and gone. Every diagnosis ended the same way: permanent blindness, no cure, no explanation. But that was before the new maid arrived. Her name was Maya. She was quiet, respectful, and carried an aura that didn't quite fit the uniform she wore. There was something in her eyes, calm yet searching, as if she could see beyond what others missed. On her first day, the staff barely noticed her. But when she met Ethan, something strange happened. The boy, who usually turned his face away from everyone, lifted his head. He smiled faintly, as if he sensed something new in the room. Maya froze for a moment, surprised, but said nothing. She simply knelt down beside him and softly asked, "Would you like me to read to you?" That simple act changed everything. Over the next few days, the mansion's mood began to shift. The staff whispered about the maid who somehow calmed the child's frequent fits, who made him laugh for the first time in years. Richard noticed too, though from a distance. He was a man buried in work, a man who believed money could fix anything, except the one thing it couldn't: his son's blindness. Yet, something about this maid unsettled him. She wasn't like the others who came and went. There was a warmth about her, but also a quiet mystery, as if she carried secrets of her own. One afternoon, Maya was in the garden with Ethan, guiding his hands over the petals of a red rose. Suddenly, the boy froze. His small fingers trembled as he whispered, "It's bright." Maya's heart skipped a beat. She looked at him, unsure what he meant. "What do you mean, Ethan?" she asked softly. He tilted his head toward her, eyes unfocused but wide, and said, "I can see something. It's glowing." Maya's breath caught in her throat. She knew what the doctors had said, that he would never see. Yet in that moment, she saw a flicker in his eyes, faint but real. It wasn't possible, unless there was something no one had noticed all along. From that day, she began observing everything: the house, the light, the strange way Ethan's behavior changed depending on where he was. And slowly, she began to suspect that Ethan's blindness wasn't caused by what everyone thought. But when Maya tried to tell Richard, something in his expression changed. He looked almost afraid, as if the truth she was uncovering wasn't just about his son's sight, but about something the Whitmore family had kept hidden for years. And that night, as the lights flickered in the mansion and Ethan whispered that he could see the shadows moving, Maya realized the truth was far darker than she ever imagined. The next morning, the mansion felt colder than usual. Rain drummed softly against the glass walls, and the air carried a strange stillness, as if the house itself was holding its breath. Maya walked quietly through the long hallway, her mind still replaying Ethan's words from the day before. "I can see the shadows moving." It didn't make sense, but she couldn't shake the feeling that he was telling the truth. When she entered Ethan's room, he was sitting near the window again, tracing patterns in the air with his small hands. "Good morning, Ethan," she said gently, placing a warm cup of milk on the table beside him. He smiled, that same curious smile that always made her heart soften. "Maya, they were here again," he whispered. "The shadows. They talk when you leave." Her fingers froze around the cup. "Who talks, sweetheart?" she asked carefully. Ethan tilted his head as if listening to something distant. "They don't use words," he murmured, "but I feel them. They don't like light." Maya tried to stay calm, but unease crept through her chest. She knew how children sometimes imagine things, especially when they couldn't see. Yet this felt different. His tone wasn't playful, it was certain. Later that day, she found herself in the old library at the far end of the mansion. The shelves were lined with books untouched for years, their spines faded and dusty. As she dusted the furniture, her eyes landed on a small framed photograph on the corner table. A woman holding a baby. The woman had gentle eyes, and the resemblance to Ethan was unmistakable. But there was something odd about the photo. The woman's image was slightly blurred, like it had been tampered with. "Beautiful picture, isn't it?" A deep voice said from behind her. Maya turned quickly to find Mr. Whitmore standing in the doorway, his expression unreadable. "That's my late wife, Eleanor," he said quietly. "Ethan was just a few months old when she passed away." "I'm sorry," Maya said softly, setting the frame back. "He misses her," Richard continued, his voice cracking slightly. "Sometimes I think he still feels her presence." There was a long pause. Then Maya asked a question that had been weighing on her mind. "Mr. Whitmore, did any doctor ever say why Ethan was born blind?" Richard's eyes hardened and his jaw tensed. "We've done every test possible," he replied sharply. "It's a genetic condition. That's all." Then, as if realizing his tone, he softened. "Please don't fill his head with ideas. He's been through enough." Maya nodded, though her heart felt heavy. That night, she couldn't sleep. She kept hearing Ethan's words echoing in her mind. "They don't like light." At midnight, unable to rest, she walked to Ethan's room. The door was slightly open, and a faint glow spilled into the hallway. She stepped closer, her pulse quickening. Ethan was sitting up in bed, his face turned toward the window, bathed in the pale light of the moon. His eyes, the ones that had always been lifeless, now seemed to shimmer faintly, almost reflecting the light. Maya stood frozen, not daring to move. Then Ethan turned toward her and whispered, "Maya, they're watching us again, but this time they're closer." And before she could respond, the lights in the hallway flickered once, then went out completely. The darkness spread through the hallway like a living thing. For a few seconds, Maya stood completely still, her heart pounding in her chest. The air felt heavy, charged, almost electric. "Ethan," she whispered, trying to keep her voice steady. The boy didn't answer. He was staring toward the window again, his unfocused eyes glinting faintly in the moonlight. "They're whispering again," he said softly. "But now they're saying your name." Maya's breath caught. She forced herself to step forward, reaching for the lamp on the bedside table. The moment she touched it, the light flickered back to life, bathing the room in a soft glow. Ethan blinked rapidly, his small hands gripping the blanket. For a fleeting moment, it looked as if his pupils reacted to the light, something the doctors had always said was impossible. The next morning, the mansion buzzed with tension. Mr. Whitmore was on a business call in his office, his tone clipped and impatient. Maya could hear fragments of his conversation, something about keeping this quiet and not letting anyone reopen the files. Her curiosity burned stronger with every word, but she forced herself to stay composed. She had learned that in this house, asking too many questions could get you dismissed quickly. Later, while helping the head butler organize the storage room, Maya noticed a locked drawer in an old cabinet. It was labeled with faded letters, medical records, E.W. Her pulse quickened. Ethan Whitmore. She waited until the butler left the room before she tried the handle. Locked, but through the narrow gap, she could see a stack of folders, one marked confidential. That night, she couldn't resist. When the mansion finally fell silent, she crept back to the room with a small hairpin she had hidden in her pocket. The drawer clicked open after a few tries. Inside, she found dozens of files, reports from clinics, doctor notes, even letters. But one paper caught her attention. It wasn't from a hospital. It was from a private research institute. The name was unfamiliar, but one line made her blood run cold. Subject exhibits unusual retinal sensitivity to electromagnetic light frequencies. Further observation recommended. Before she could read more, a voice echoed from behind her. "What are you doing here?" Maya spun around. It was Richard Whitmore, standing in the doorway, his face pale and tense. "You shouldn't be looking at that," he said quietly, stepping closer. "You have no idea what you're getting into." Maya swallowed hard. "Mr. Whitmore, I think there's more to Ethan's condition than anyone has told me. He's not blind, at least not in the way you believe. He's seeing something, and it's not imaginary." Richard's expression darkened. For a moment, he looked like he wanted to shout, but instead he sank into a chair, his voice low and heavy. "You think I don't know that?" he said bitterly. You think I haven't seen what happens when the lights go out? Maya stared at him, her heart racing. Then why hide it? Because what Ethan sees, he said, looking her straight in the eye, isn't supposed to exist. The words hung in the air like a chill. Before Maya could speak again, a loud crash echoed from upstairs. Both of them froze. Then, through the silence, came Ethan's trembling voice from the hallway above. "Dad, Maya, they're here again." And when they ran upstairs, the door to Ethan's room was wide open, the window curtains blowing wildly in the night wind, and Ethan was nowhere to be seen. Maya's scream echoed through the corridor as she rushed into Ethan's empty room. The curtains whipped in the wind, and the cold air carried a faint electric hum, the same strange vibration she felt the night the lights first flickered. Richard stumbled in behind her, his face pale and eyes wide. "Ethan!" he shouted, his voice cracking. But there was no reply, only the soft rattle of the window and the rhythmic ticking of the old clock on the wall. Maya leaned out the open window, her breath fogging the glass. The garden below was dark, but she could see faint footprints in the wet soil, small, hurried ones leading toward the old greenhouse at the edge of the estate. "There!" she cried, already running. Richard followed, his footsteps heavy against the marble floor. As they stepped into the rain, thunder rolled overhead, and the power in the mansion flickered once more before vanishing completely. The estate was swallowed in darkness. The greenhouse loomed ahead, its glass panels fogged and cracked with age. A dim, pulsing light glowed faintly from inside, like something alive was breathing beneath the glass. Maya's heart pounded as she pushed the door open. Inside, the air was warm and humming. The plants rustled faintly, though there was no wind. In the center, surrounded by pots and vines, stood Ethan. His small hands were outstretched, and his eyes, wide open, shimmered with a silvery light that seemed to reflect from within. "Ethan," Maya whispered, stepping closer. "Sweetheart, we're here. You need to come away from there." He turned toward her slowly. "They're not bad," he said quietly. "They just want to show me." "Show you what?" Richard demanded, his voice trembling with fear and anger. But Ethan didn't answer. His eyes shifted toward the far wall where the light seemed to gather and twist, forming shapes, almost human, almost shadow. Maya's skin prickled. She could feel the air vibrating, thick with something unseen but very real. Then suddenly, the glow intensified. The shadows expanded, moving toward them. Richard grabbed Ethan, but the boy didn't resist. He simply looked at his father with a strange calmness. "Dad," he said softly, "you knew this was going to happen, didn't you?" Richard froze. His grip on Ethan tightened, but he couldn't find words. Maya looked between them, confused and frightened. "What is he talking about?" she asked. Richard's voice broke. "Years ago, before you were born," he said, staring at Ethan. "Your mother, she worked with scientists who believed that certain light frequencies could open parts of the mind we can't access. She thought she could help people see beyond what's humanly visible." His eyes filled with guilt. "Something went wrong. You were born different." The shadows pulsed at his words, as if reacting. The air trembled again. Maya took Ethan's hand, but his skin felt warm, almost burning. "Mr. Whitmore," she whispered, "whatever this is, we have to stop it." "I've tried," he said, his voice breaking. "Every test, every treatment. They weren't meant to cure him. They were meant to contain it." Lightning flashed outside, and for an instant, the entire greenhouse glowed with otherworldly brilliance. Ethan's eyes blazed brighter, and the light inside began to spread outward, reflecting across the glass walls. The shadows shrieked soundlessly, swirling faster until they surrounded them completely. Maya clutched Ethan tightly, feeling his heartbeat race under her hands. "Ethan, listen to me," she whispered, her voice trembling. "You can fight this." But Ethan only whispered back, almost in wonder, "Maya, I can see everything now." And then the light burst outward, swallowing the room in blinding white. When the blinding light finally faded, everything was silent. The air was thick with mist, and the once bustling greenhouse stood frozen in eerie stillness. Broken pots lay scattered across the floor, the plants motionless as if time itself had stopped. Maya blinked several times, trying to adjust her vision. The world around her seemed washed in pale light, as though color itself had drained away. Her ears rang faintly, and her first thought was Ethan. She turned quickly, but the boy was gone. Only a faint outline of his small footprints shimmered on the damp floor, glowing faintly before fading into nothing. Panic clawed at her chest. "Ethan!" she cried, her voice echoing against the glass walls. Richard was on his knees, clutching his head, his eyes wide with disbelief. "He was right here," he whispered. "He was right here." Maya grabbed his shoulders. "We have to find him. He can't just vanish." But Richard didn't move. His gaze was locked on the far side of the greenhouse, where the light had been strongest. There, half buried under a fallen shelf, lay a small metallic device. It was no bigger than a palm, marked with strange circular patterns and faint inscriptions that looked scientific yet ancient. Maya knelt beside it, her fingers trembling as she brushed off the dirt. "What is this?" she whispered. Richard hesitated before answering. "It's something your mother discovered," he said, his voice barely audible. "It was part of her experiments, the source of everything that went wrong. We thought it was destroyed." Maya froze. "You mean Eleanor Whitmore?" she asked, realizing suddenly that the woman in the photograph, Ethan's mother, might not be gone after all. Richard didn't answer, but his silence said enough. A chilling realization washed over Maya. "She's alive, isn't she?" she breathed. Richard looked up, guilt shadowing his face. "She disappeared the night Ethan was born," he said quietly. "But a few months ago, I started receiving messages from her. I ignored them because they said things that couldn't be true. That Ethan's blindness wasn't an accident, that he was connected to something she couldn't control." Before Maya could respond, a faint hum filled the air again. The metallic device began to glow, the patterns pulsing like a heartbeat. The greenhouse lights flickered back on, and the reflection in the glass startled her. Behind them stood a figure, faint but visible, like a shadow outlined in silver. It was a woman's shape, her hand gently reaching forward. Maya's breath caught. "Richard," she whispered. "Look." He turned, and his face drained of color. "Eleanor?" The figure tilted her head, her form flickering like static. Then, in a voice that was soft but carried through the air, she said, "You should have told her the truth." Maya stepped forward, trembling. "Told me what?" she demanded. The shadow turned its gaze toward her, the glow brightening until it nearly hurt to look. "Ethan isn't lost," the voice said. "He's where he was always meant to be, on the other side of the light." The metallic device pulsed faster, vibrating violently now. Richard reached for it, shouting, "No, not again." But before he could touch it, the glow expanded once more, and the figure of Eleanor dissolved into it. The floor shook, the air crackled with electricity, and the sound of a child's voice echoed faintly, distant yet clear. "Dad, Maya, I can see you." Maya froze, her eyes wide with fear and awe. The voice wasn't coming from the greenhouse anymore. It was coming from inside the light itself. And as the brightness grew until it filled every corner, she realized with a shudder, Ethan wasn't gone. He had crossed into something neither of them could understand, and whatever waited on the other side was now reaching back. The light swallowed everything once again, but this time it wasn't blinding. It was calm, almost warm. Maya felt her body lift slightly, like she was weightless. Then the light dimmed, and she found herself standing in a space that didn't feel like the greenhouse anymore. It looked like a reflection of it. The same glass walls, the same structure, but surrounded by a soft, silvery glow. The air was still, and every sound echoed gently, like they were inside a dream. And there, in the middle of the glowing floor, stood Ethan. His eyes were open, clear, bright, and full of light. He looked at Maya and smiled, the way only a child could, pure and unafraid. "You made it," he said softly. "Mom said you would." Maya's heart stopped for a moment. "Ethan, you can see?" she whispered, her voice trembling with disbelief. He nodded. "I can see everything now. The shadows, the light, even what they were hiding." Before she could ask what he meant, another figure appeared beside him. It was a woman, calm, graceful, with eyes that looked like they'd seen 1,000 storms. Eleanor Whitmore. She was not a ghost or a reflection. She was real, though surrounded by the same silver glow that filled the room. Richard staggered forward, unable to speak. "Eleanor, how?" he breathed. She smiled sadly. "I never died, Richard. I was trapped here in the light when the experiment went wrong. I tried to reach you, but the barrier between us only allowed shadows and whispers." Her gaze shifted to Ethan. He inherited my connection. That's why he could feel the light, why he wasn't truly blind. His sight was never gone. It was redirected, tuned to something beyond this world. Maya felt tears welling up in her eyes. "Then we can bring him back," she said quickly. "You can both come back." Eleanor shook her head. "It's not that simple. The balance between the two sides is fragile. If the gate closes before he learns to control it, both worlds could collapse." But she reached out, her hand glowing as she touched Ethan's shoulder. "He's stronger than I ever was." Richard took a shaky step forward. "Then let me help," he said, voice breaking. "I won't lose you both." Eleanor looked at him with a sad tenderness. "You already helped, Richard. You kept him alive. Now he must finish what we began." Suddenly, the silver glow began to tremble. The walls flickered, and cracks of light shot through the air like lightning. Ethan turned, his voice urgent. "It's closing, Dad. We have to go now." Richard reached for him, and for an instant their hands met through the shimmer. Then Eleanor whispered something Maya barely heard. "Save the light before it finds another." With that, she pushed Ethan forward, toward the fading outline of the real greenhouse. Maya caught him just as the light shattered, pulling them both through. They landed hard on the wet floor of the real world, gasping for air. The glow vanished, the mist cleared, and the greenhouse was silent again. Richard knelt beside them, tears streaming down his face as he hugged his son tightly. Ethan buried his face in his father's shoulder, whispering, "I saw her. She's not gone." For a long time, no one spoke. The storm outside had stopped. Morning light streamed through glass, golden and gentle. It felt peaceful. But as Maya turned to look back, her breath caught. On the far wall, faint but visible, was a handprint, glowing softly in silver, the same glow that had filled the other side. And just beneath it, etched into the glass, were 5 small words that hadn't been there before. "The light never sleeps again." Maya froze. The words pulsed once like a heartbeat and faded into the glass, leaving only silence. She looked back at Ethan. His bright eyes met hers. For a brief moment, she thought she saw the faintest flicker of silver light in them. He smiled the same peaceful smile his mother had and whispered, "It's still here, Maya, watching." And though the sun had finally risen, a quiet shadow lingered across the Whitmore mansion, as if the light itself was waiting for something yet to come. In the days that followed, the Whitmore mansion felt different, lighter somehow, though a strange stillness remained in its halls. The morning sunlight streamed into the tall windows again, no longer sharp or cold, but warm and soft, filling every corner with quiet life. For the first time in years, laughter returned to the house. Ethan's laughter. It was a sound Richard thought he'd never hear again. Maya stayed by his side every day, helping him adjust to the world he could finally see. Everything fascinated him. The way the colors of the garden changed in the afternoon, the sparkle of raindrops on the glass, even the way light danced across Maya's eyes when she smiled. Yet there were moments when he'd pause, his gaze drifting toward empty spaces, as if watching something no one else could. Once, while walking the garden, Maya asked gently, "Ethan, when you look at the light now, what do you see?" He thought for a moment before answering. "It's not like before," he said softly. "It doesn't whisper anymore. It just watches, but it feels peaceful now, like it's resting." Richard had been quieter since that night in the greenhouse. He cleared out his late wife's lab and locked away the remaining research, keeping only her journal, the one she wrote before the experiments began. Inside, he found a final note that made his hands tremble. "If the light ever finds balance, our son will be its keeper." He read it again and again, realizing that Eleanor had known what would happen all along. She had sacrificed herself not just to protect their child, but to give him something beyond ordinary sight. the ability to see truth in its purest form. One evening, Richard found Maya standing by the window, watching the sunset. "You've done more for us than I could ever thank you for," he said quietly. "You didn't just bring light back to Ethan, you brought it back to this house." Maya smiled, though her eyes glistened. "I didn't do anything special. The light was always here. It just needed someone to see it differently." As the weeks turned into months, Ethan grew stronger. His vision was not like anyone else's. Doctors couldn't explain it, but he could see beyond distance and shadow, as if the world carried layers of meaning only he could read. Sometimes he'd draw what he saw, waves of silver lines, glowing shapes, things that looked like stars floating inside the air itself. Life slowly found rhythm again. The mansion no longer felt haunted by loss, but guarded by memory. Maya eventually decided to leave, feeling her work there was complete. On her last day, Ethan handed her a small glass prism, one that shimmered faintly in sunlight. "So you can always see what's hidden," he said, smiling. As she stepped out into the morning, Maya looked back one last time. The mansion stood quiet and golden, the windows reflecting both sunlight and something softer, almost like a presence watching over them. For a moment, she could have sworn she saw a woman's silhouette in the upstairs window, smiling peacefully. She whispered under her breath, "Rest now, Eleanor." Then she walked away, the prism catching the light with every step, scattering it into countless colors. Inside, Richard watched Ethan play by the window, his eyes bright and alive. The boy turned and said quietly, "Dad, the light says thank you." Richard froze, then smiled with tears in his eyes. "Tell we're grateful too, son." And as the last rays of the day filled the house, it felt as though the light itself bowed gently, no longer a mystery to be feared, but truth finally understood.